She traded a family for a car salesman.
I should have known something was wrong when I pulled into my driveway and saw the shiny red Corvette parked where my truck usually sat. After 12 hours of managing a construction crew in 90-degree heat, dealing with delayed concrete deliveries and a foreman who couldn't tell a 2x4 from his own elbow, all I wanted was a cold beer and maybe catch the end of the Cubs game with my son Ethan. Instead, I walked into my own living room and found my wife, Elena, perched on some slick-haired stranger's lap, like she was auditioning for a music video. My 14-year-old son sat awkwardly on the opposite couch, staring at his phone, while my mother-in-law, Judith, held court for my favorite recliner with a champagne flute in her manicured hand. "Danny," Elena said, not even bothering to get off the guy's lap. Her voice had that icy tone she usually reserved for telemarketers and door-to-door missionaries. "Perfect timing. We need to talk." The stranger, tall, tan, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary, extended his hand with a grin that belonged in a toothpaste commercial. "You must be Danny. I'm Trent Morrison. I've heard so much about you." I didn't shake his hand. Instead, I looked around my living room, taking in the scene, like I was surveying a job site. Elena's lottery ticket from last week sat framed on the coffee table next to an open bottle of Dom Perignon. The winning lottery ticket. $10 million. The ticket I'd bought her for her birthday. "Congratulations on the big win, honey," I said, setting down my hard hat and work gloves. "I see we're celebrating." Elena's smile could have frozen heck over. "Actually, Danny, that's what we need to discuss. Things are going to change around here, dramatically." Judith cleared her throat, clearly relishing her moment in the spotlight. "Elena has finally come to her senses about this marriage, Daniel. A woman of her tool with her new financial situation, well," she gestured vaguely at my work clothes, my steel-toed boots, the dust still clinging to my jeans. "Mom," Ethan mumbled, not looking up from his phone. "This is weird." "What's weird?" Elena said, standing up and smoothing down her designer dress. "Is that I've wasted 15 years of my life pretending to be happy with someone who has no ambition, no class, and no future. Trent here owns 3 car dealerships. He understands success." Trent nodded sagely, like she'd just quoted Shakespeare instead of delivering the most cliched breakup speech in history. "Danny, I want you to know this isn't personal. Elena and I, we just connect on a different level. Intellectually, spiritually, financially." I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I walked over to the mantelpiece where my old boxing gloves hung. A reminder of my Golden Gloves days, back when I thought I might make something of myself in the ring instead of swinging a hammer for a living. "So let me get this straight," I said, running my fingers over the worn leather. "My wife wins $10 million with the ticket I bought her, and suddenly she's discovered that 15 years of marriage, a house, a kid, and a life together means nothing because she's found herself a sugar daddy with a Corvette. It's not about the money," Elena snapped. "It's about finally being with someone who appreciates me, someone who can give me the life I deserve." "The life you deserve?" I nodded slowly. "Right. And what about our son? What about the prenup your parents made us sign before we got married? Remember that little document, Elena? The one that protects both our assets in case of divorce?" For the first time since I'd walked in, Elena's confidence flickered. Just for a second, then Trent squeezed her hand and whispered something in her ear that made her smile again. "The prenup won't be a problem," she said. "My lawyer says lottery winnings acquired during marriage are different. Besides, I'm sure you'll be reasonable about this. For Ethan's sake." Judith raised her champagne glass in a mock toast. "To Elena's new beginning and Daniel's graceful exit." That's when I knew I was looking at a setup. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision or even a recent affair. This was planned, orchestrated, probably weeks in the making. The lottery win had just been the catalyst they were waiting for. "Dad?" Ethan finally looked up from his phone, his eyes darting between his mother and me. "What's happening?" "What's happening, son, is that your mother has decided to trade in her old life for a newer model." I picked up my hard hat and gloves. "But don't worry, this isn't over, not by a long shot." Elena's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "Actually, Danny, it is over. I've already spoken to my lawyer. You have until this weekend to pack your things and find somewhere else to live. Trent will be moving in to help me transition into my new life." "Our new life," Trent corrected, pulling her close. "Elena deserves to be treated like a queen, something you never understood." I looked at my son one more time. He was staring at the floor now, his face red with embarrassment. Then I looked at my wife of 15 years, the The woman I'd worked double shifts to support through real estate school. The woman I'd held when she cried about her mother's criticism. The woman who used to laugh at my stupid jokes and steal bites of my breakfast on Sunday mornings. You know what, Elena, you're absolutely right. This marriage is over. I headed for the door, then paused. But you might want to reread that prenup before you start spending my money. Your daddy's lawyers were pretty thorough back in the day. The last thing I heard as I walked out was Trent asking, "What prenup?" I climbed into my beat-up Ford pickup and sat there for a minute, hands shaking with rage. 15 years, a son, a mortgage we'd paid together. Dreams we'd shared, plans we'd made. A life we'd built from nothing. And she'd thrown it all away for a car salesman with a Corvette and a smooth line of BS. But Elena had made one crucial mistake. She'd forgotten that I wasn't just some blue-collar nobody who'd roll over and play dead. I was Danny Sullivan, and I'd learned a long time ago that when someone knocks you down, you get back up swinging. This wasn't over. This was just round one. The Pine View Motor Lodge hadn't seen its best days since the Carter administration, but it was cheap, clean enough, and only 20 minutes from the construction site. My new home was a 10 by 12 room with wood paneling that belonged in a time capsule and a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in. The bed sagged in the middle, the air conditioner sounded like a dying helicopter, and the neighbors on both sides seemed to think midnight was the perfect time for domestic disputes. But it was mine, at least until I figured out my next move. I'd been there 3 days when my phone started buzzing with calls from people who'd heard about Elena's lottery win and our sudden separation. Small towns are like that. News travels faster than gossip, and gossip travels at the speed of light. "Danny, buddy, I heard about Elena." That was Mike Chen from the construction crew calling during lunch break. "Man, that's rough. You need anything?" "Just some space to think, Mike. Thanks for asking." "You know, my cousin went through something similar. His ex tried to take everything, but he fought it and came out okay. You got a good lawyer?" I looked around my motel room, calculating how much a good lawyer might cost against my savings account balance. "Working on it." The truth was, I'd already called 3 attorneys. The first one wanted a $5,000 retainer just to look at my case. The second one took one look at Elena's lottery win and practically started salivating over his potential fees. The third one, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Reddick, had at least been honest. "Mr. Sullivan, I'll be straight with you. Your wife has $10 million in the best family law firm in the state. This isn't going to be easy or cheap, but if you really do have a solid prenuptial agreement, we might have a fighting chance." I'd made an appointment to see her tomorrow, bringing every document I could find related to our marriage, our finances, and that prenup Elena seemed so eager to forget about. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. "Danny, it's Maya Rodriguez, Elena's friend from the real estate office." I remembered Maya. Tall, dark-haired, with the kind of sharp intelligence that made her one of the top agents in town. She and Elena had been close for years, often going out for drinks after work or attending those real estate seminars together. "Maya, let me guess, you're calling to tell me what a terrible husband I was and how Elena deserves better." "Actually, no. I'm calling because I think you deserve to know what's really been going on." That got my attention. "I'm listening." "Not over the phone. Can you meet me somewhere private?" An hour later, I was sitting across from Maya in a corner booth at Denny's. The kind of place where the coffee was strong, the lighting was dim, and nobody paid attention to other people's conversations. Maya looked nervous, constantly checking over her shoulder and fidgeting with her wedding ring. "Danny, I need you to know that what I'm about to tell you could ruin my friendship with Elena, but I can't stand by and watch this happen. Watch what happened. This whole thing with Trent, it's been going on for months. Since before the lottery win. Elena's been planning to leave you for a while now. The money just gave her the courage to do it. I felt like someone had punched me in the gut. How long have you known?" "I suspected something was wrong about 3 months ago. Elena started working late more often, buying new clothes, getting her hair done every week. Then I saw her car at the Marriott downtown one afternoon when she was supposed to be showing houses." Maya pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. Elena and Trent walking out of the hotel together, his hand on the small of her back, both of them laughing. "I took this 2 weeks ago. Danny, I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner, but I kept hoping she'd come to her senses." "Why are you telling me now?" Maya's jaw tightened. "Because Trent Morrison is a piece of garbage who's done this before. He targets married women with money, charms them into leaving their husbands, then bleeds them dry. I know because he did it to my sister 5 years ago. Destroyed her marriage, took her for everything she had, then moved on to the next mark. And Elena doesn't know this. Elena doesn't want to know. She's so caught up in the fantasy of being rich and desired that she can't see what's right in front of her. But Danny, there's more. Maya leaned across the table, lowering her voice. Trent's been bragging to his buddies about how he's going to be set for life once he gets his hands on Elena's lottery money. He's already talking about investments they could make together, trips they could take. He's even looked into getting your house appraised. My house? The house you and Elena bought together. The house you've been paying the mortgage on for 10 years. Trent thinks once Elena divorces you, they can sell it and use the money to buy something bigger and better. I sat back in the booth, processing this information. It was one thing to lose my wife to another man. That was personal, emotional, something I could maybe understand even if I couldn't forgive it. But this was calculated, predatory. Trent Morrison wasn't just stealing my wife. He was planning to steal my entire life. Maya, why are you really telling me this? What's in it for you? She smiled grimly. Like I said, Trent destroyed my sister's life. She never recovered from what he did to her. She's still paying off the debts he left her with. I've been waiting years for a chance to take him down. And now you have one. We have one. Elena's my friend, but she's making the biggest mistake of her life, and she's too stubborn to listen to reason. Maybe if Trent's true nature gets exposed, she'll wake up before it's too late. Maya reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. These are copies of some documents my sister kept from her relationship with Trent. Bank statements, loan applications, credit reports. It's a pattern, Danny. He's done this before, and he'll do it again. I opened the envelope and scanned the papers inside. It was all there, a clear trail of financial manipulation, emotional misuse, and abandonment. Trent Morrison was a professional predator, and Elena was his latest victim. What do you want me to do with this? Whatever you think is best. But, Danny, be careful. Trent's not just a con man. He's dangerous when he's cornered. My sister tried to expose him once, and he made her life heck. Maltreatment, threats, vandalism. He's got connections in this town, people who owe him favors. I closed the envelope and looked at Maya. You know this could backfire on both of us? If Elena finds out you gave me this information? Elena stopped being my friend the day she decided to destroy her family for a man she barely knows. I'm done protecting her from her own stupidity. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the situation settling between us. Then Maya reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Danny, I know this is hard, but you're a good man, and you deserve better than this. Don't let them destroy you without a fight. After Maya left, I sat in my truck in the Denny's parking lot, staring at the envelope in my hands. Inside was enough information to potentially destroy Trent Morrison's reputation and maybe save my marriage. But did I want to save a marriage to a woman who'd been planning to leave me for months? Did I want to fight for someone who'd already made her choice? My phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. Dad, can you pick me up from school tomorrow? Mom's busy with Trent. That decided it. This wasn't just about Elena and me anymore. This was about my son, my home, and my future. Trent Morrison had picked the wrong family to destroy. I started the truck and headed back to the motel. I had a lot of work to do. Patricia Reddick's law office occupied the second floor of a converted Victorian house downtown, the kind of place that managed to look both professional and welcoming. Her receptionist, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, offered me coffee while I waited. Mr. Sullivan? Miss Reddick will see you now. Patricia Reddick was nothing like the lawyers I'd imagined. She was probably 50, with graying hair pulled back in a practical bun, wearing a simple blue suit that looked expensive but not flashy. Her office was lined with law books and family photos, and she had the kind of direct gaze that suggested she didn't suffer fools gladly. Mr. Sullivan, please have a seat. I've reviewed the documents you faxed over, and I have to say, this is an interesting case. Interesting good or interesting bad? She smiled. Interesting as in your wife's family may have done you a bigger favor than they realized when they insisted on that prenuptial agreement. Tell me, do you remember the specific terms? I pulled out my copy of the prenup, the pages yellowed with age. Elena's parents insisted on it before we got married. They were worried about protecting their daughter's assets. She had some money from her grandmother's estate, and they owned the house she was living in. The agreement basically says that anything we brought into the marriage stays separate, and anything we acquire together gets split 50-50. including lottery winnings? That's what I'm not sure about. Elena seems to think the lottery ticket changes everything. Patricia put on her reading glasses and studied the document. Well, let's see. The ticket was purchased during the marriage with marital funds. Your paycheck, I assume? Yes. I bought it at the gas station on my way home from work. Used our joint checking account. And it was a gift to your wife? For her birthday, yeah? Patricia leaned back in her chair, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Mr. Sullivan, I have some very good news for you. Under state law, lottery winnings are considered marital property if the ticket was purchased with marital funds during the marriage. The fact that it was a gift is irrelevant. It's still a marital asset subject to division. So I'm entitled to half? Potentially, yes, but there's more. I also reviewed the property records for your house. You said Elena's parents owned it when you got married? Right. We moved in after the wedding, and I've been paying the mortgage ever since. For 15 years? Every month. Never missed a payment. Patricia made a note on her legal pad. That means you've built substantial equity in a property that was originally separate asset. In most cases, that would entitle you to reimbursement for the mortgage payments, plus a share of the increased value. I felt a spark of hope for the first time in days. So Elena can't just kick me out and sell the house? Not without compensating you for your contribution to the property. Mr. Sullivan, your wife may have $10 million, but she's not in as strong a position as she thinks. We spent the next hour going over my financial situation, my employment history, and my relationship with Ethan. Patricia took detailed notes and asked pointed questions about Elena's behavior, Trent Morrison, and the timeline of events. Now, Mr. Sullivan, I need to ask you about something sensitive. Do you have any evidence of your wife's relationship with Mr. Morrison? Photos, text messages, anything that proves adultery? I thought about Maya's envelope, still sitting in my truck. I might be able to get some. That could be very helpful. In this state, adultery can affect property division and spousal support. If we can prove your wife was unfaithful, it strengthens your position considerably. What about custody of my son? Patricia's expression softened. That's always the most difficult part of these cases. The court will consider what's in Ethan's best interest, but they generally favor arrangements that allow both parents to remain involved. Your wife's new relationship and sudden lifestyle change could work in your favor, especially if we can show that Mr. Morrison is an unsuitable influence. How long will all this take? That depends on how reasonable your wife wants to be. If she's willing to negotiate, we could have a settlement within a few months. If she wants to fight, Patricia shrugged, could be a year or more. And, Mr. Sullivan, I need to be honest with you about the costs. This won't be cheap, especially if your wife hires an expensive firm. How much are we talking about? My retainer is $3,000 and my hourly rate is $250. If this goes to trial, you're looking at potentially $20,000 to $30,000 in legal fees. I felt my heart sink. Even with a good case, I couldn't afford a prolonged legal battle against Elena's lottery-funded legal team. Patricia must have seen the expression on my face. Mr. Sullivan, there is another option. If your case is as strong as I think it is, I might be willing to work on a contingency basis for the property settlement. That means I don't get paid unless you do. You'd do that? I've been practicing family law for 25 years, and I've seen too many good people get steamrolled by spouses who think money can buy them anything they want. Your wife made a mistake when she assumed you'd just roll over and let her take everything. Let's prove her wrong. I left Patricia's office feeling better than I had since this nightmare started. For the first time, I had a plan and someone in my corner who knew how to fight. But first, I needed to have a conversation with Maya about those documents. I called her from the parking lot. Maya, it's Danny. Can we meet again? I think I'm ready to look at what you showed me. Actually, Danny, there's something else. I was at the office today, and I overheard Elena on the phone with someone. Sounded like a lawyer. She was asking about getting you declared an unfit father. What? She was talking about your anger issues and how you might be dangerous around Ethan. Danny, I think she's planning to go for full custody. The spark of hope I'd felt after meeting with Patricia flickered and nearly died. Elena wasn't just trying to take my money and my house, she was going after my son. Maya, I need those documents. Tonight. Meet me at the construction site on Maple Street, the one where you're working. I'll be there at 8. I spent the rest of the afternoon in a haze of anger and determination. Elena wanted to play hardball? Fine. She was about to learn that her blue-collar husband wasn't as helpless as she thought. At 8 o'clock sharp, Maya's car pulled up to the construction site. She handed me a larger envelope this time, thick with papers and photographs. Danny, there's something else I need to tell you. I did some digging into Trent's business dealings. Those car dealerships he's so proud of. 2 of them are in financial trouble. He's been using money from one business to prop up the others. Classic Ponzi scheme behavior. How do you know all this? Maya smiled grimly. My ex-husband was an accountant before he became a drunk. He taught me how to read financial statements. Trent Morrison is not the successful businessman he pretends to be. He needs Elena's money more than she realizes. I opened the envelope and started reading. Bank records, credit reports, court filings, police reports. It was all there. Trent Morrison wasn't just a con man. He was a desperate con man facing financial ruin. Maya, this is incredible. How did you get all this? I have friends in various places. The important thing is that it's all legally obtained public information. Your lawyer should be able to use most of it. I looked up at Maya, standing there in the dim light from the construction site's security lamps. Why are you doing this? Really? Because 15 years ago, I was in Elena's position, married to a good man, bored with my life, convinced I deserved something better. I had an affair with a man who promised me the world and delivered nothing but heartbreak and debt. What happened? My husband found out, divorced me, and got custody of our daughter. The man I left him for disappeared as soon as things got complicated. I spent the next 10 years rebuilding my life and my relationship with my daughter. I don't want to see Elena make the same mistake I did, but if she's determined to destroy her family, at least I can make sure you and Ethan don't pay the full price. We stood there in comfortable silence for a moment. 2 people who understood what it meant to have your life turned upside down by someone else's selfish choices. Danny, there's one more thing. Elena's planning some kind of party this weekend. A celebration of her new life, she called it. She's invited half the town, including a lot of your mutual friends. A party? At your house, with Trent playing host. She wants to make a public statement about their relationship. I felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. Elena wasn't content to just leave me. She wanted to humiliate me in front of everyone we knew. Maya, I think it's time Elena learned that actions have consequences. What are you going to do? I looked at the envelope in my hands, then at the construction site around us. Tons of heavy equipment, building materials, and tools that could be very useful for making a point. I'm going to give Elena and Trent a party they'll never forget. Saturday evening arrived gray and drizzly, the kind of weather that makes everything look dingy and depressing. Perfect for what I had in mind. I spent the day preparing, making phone calls, and setting things in motion. Patricia had been thrilled when I showed her Maya's documents, and she'd already filed preliminary motions to freeze Elena's access to the lottery money and to prevent any sale of the house. Elena's lawyer would receive the papers on Monday morning, but tonight she was still living in her fantasy world where money solved everything. The party was in full swing by the time I arrived. Cars lined both sides of our street, my street, the street where I'd lived for 15 years, where I'd coached Little League games in the front yard and taught Ethan to ride his bike. Elena had strung lights around the front porch and hired a catering company. Through the living room windows, I could see dozens of people I recognized. Neighbors, Elena's real estate colleagues, people from Ethan's school, even some guys from my construction crew. I parked my truck around the corner and walked back, carrying a cardboard box and wearing my best suit, the one I'd gotten married in, actually. If I was going to crash my own wife's party, I might as well look good doing it. The front door was open, music and laughter spilling out into the night. I walked right in like I belonged there, which technically I did. Danny! That was Mrs. Henderson from next door, looking surprised and a little embarrassed. I didn't expect to see you here. Wouldn't miss it for the world, Mrs. Henderson. This is my house, after all. I made my way through the crowd, nodding to people I knew, ignoring the whispers that followed in my wake. Elena had done a nice job with the decorations, flowers everywhere, fancy hors d'oeuvres, champagne flowing like water. My 15 years of mortgage payments had certainly created a nice venue for her celebration. I found Elena and Trent holding court in the living room, surrounded by a group of admirers listening to Trent tell some story about his business success. Elena was wearing a dress that probably cost more than I made in a week, and Trent looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine ad for expensive watches. And that's when I realized, Trent was saying, that success isn't just about making money. It's about recognizing opportunity and having the courage to seize it. How inspiring, I said, stepping into the circle. Mind if I join the conversation? The room went quiet. Elena's face went pale, then flushed red with anger. Danny, what are you doing here? Well, Elena, this is still my house until the divorce is final. I thought I'd stop by and congratulate you on your new relationship. I turned to Trent with my best smile. And I wanted to meet the man who's been sleeping with my wife for the past 3 months. The silence was deafening. Someone's champagne glass clinked against a table. In the kitchen, the caterers continued working, oblivious to the drama unfolding in the living room. Trent stepped forward, puffing out his chest. Now see here, Sullivan. No, you see here. I opened my cardboard box and pulled out a thick folder. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to share some interesting facts about Mr. Trent Morrison, successful businessman and my wife's new boyfriend. Danny, don't you dare, Elena started. Did you know, I continued, opening the folder, that Mr. Morrison's 3 car dealerships are currently facing bankruptcy? Or that he's been sued 17 times in the past 5 years for fraud, breach of contract, and misconduct? I pulled out photocopies of court documents and started passing them around. The crowd pressed closer, suddenly very interested in what I had to say. Here's a particularly interesting one. A restraining order filed by his last girlfriend, who accused him of stalking and financial manipulation. Sound familiar, Elena? Trent lunged forward, trying to grab the papers out of my hands. You can't prove any of that. Actually, I can. It's all public record. I stepped back, keeping the documents out of his reach. But here's my personal favorite. The police report filed by Sandra Morrison, no relation, who claims Mr. Morrison convinced her to invest her life savings in one of his businesses, then disappeared with the money. That's enough, Elena shrieked. Everyone out! Party's over! But nobody moved. The crowd was riveted, watching this real-life soap opera unfold in their midst. Oh, but, Elena, I'm just getting started. I pulled out another set of papers. I also have some interesting information about your new boyfriend's romantic history. Did you know he's done this exact same thing 3 times before? Targeted married women with money, convinced them to leave their husbands, then cleaned out their bank accounts? I looked directly at Elena, who was standing frozen in the middle of the room. Did he tell you about Sandra Martinez, who lost her house because of him? Or Jennifer Walsh, who ended up filing for bankruptcy? Or my personal favorite, Rebecca Chen, who tried to end herself after Trent destroyed her marriage and her finances? You're lying, Elena whispered. Am I? I pulled out Maya's photographs. Trent with other women, at other parties, in other cities. Here's Trent with Sandra at a casino in Atlantic City. Here he is with Jennifer at a resort in Florida. And here's a particularly touching shot of him with Rebecca at what looks like her divorce celebration. The crowd murmured, passing the photos from hand to hand. Trent's face had gone from red to white to green. Elena, I said gently, you're not special to him. You're just the latest mark in a long line of women he's conned. The only difference is you hit the lottery, so the payoff is bigger. That's not true! Elena turned to Trent desperately. Tell them it's not true! Trent was backing toward the door, his smooth confidence completely gone. Elena, baby, we can talk about this later. Tell them, she screamed. Instead, Trent bolted. He pushed through the crowd, knocking over a tray of champagne glasses, and ran for the front door. I heard his Corvette start up and roar away into the night. Elena stood in the middle of the destroyed party, surrounded by her friends and neighbors, all staring at her with a mixture of pity and embarrassment. The catered food sat untouched, the champagne had stopped flowing, and the festive atmosphere had turned toxic. Elena, Mrs. Henderson said gently, honey, maybe you should sit down. Get out, Elena said quietly. Then louder, everyone get out, now! The crowd began to disperse, people gathering their coats and purses, whispering to each other as they headed for the door. Within minutes, the house was empty except for Elena, me, and Ethan, who had been watching from the stairs. Dad? Ethan came down slowly, looking confused and scared. What's happening? What's happening, son, is that your mother just learned an important lesson about trusting the wrong people. Elena was sitting on the couch now, her expensive dress wrinkled, her perfect makeup smeared with tears. How could you do that to me? In front of everyone? How could I? I sat down across from her, suddenly feeling very tired. Elena, you threw away 15 years of marriage for a con man. You were planning to take my son away from me, sell my house, and leave me with nothing. You wanted to humiliate me in front of the whole town. All I did was tell the truth. The truth according to who? Some jealous ex-girlfriend? The truth according to court records, police reports, and financial documents. Elena, the man you were going to trust with $10 million, has been running the same scam for years. If I hadn't stopped you, you'd have lost everything. She looked up at me with hate in her eyes. I already have lost everything. My reputation, my friends, my chance at happiness. Your chance at happiness was sitting right here for 15 years, and you threw it away because you thought you deserved better. I stood up and looked around the house one more time. Well, congratulations, Elena. You're about to find out exactly what you deserve. I walked over to Ethan and put my hand on his shoulder. Son, I want you to know that no matter what happens between your mother and me, I love you, and I'm not going anywhere. Can I come stay with you, Dad? Elena jumped up from the couch. Absolutely not, Ethan. You're staying here with me. Actually, Elena, that's going to be up to a judge. My lawyer filed papers yesterday requesting emergency custody based on your plan to move Ethan to California with a man who's now a fugitive from justice. Trent's not a fugitive. Check the news tomorrow. I sent copies of all those documents to the district attorney's office this afternoon. Turns out Mr. Morrison has been operating his businesses without proper licenses and has outstanding warrants in 2 other states. Elena stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Who are you? This isn't the man I married. No, Elena, it's not. The man you married was naive enough to think that love and loyalty mattered. The man standing here now knows better. I headed for the door, then turned back one last time. Oh, and Elena? You might want to call your lawyer first thing Monday morning. You're going to need him. As I walked out into the drizzly night, I could hear Elena sobbing behind me. I should have felt sorry for her, but all I felt was a cold satisfaction. She'd wanted to play hardball, and now she was learning the rules of the game. But this was just the beginning. Elena still had $10 million, and desperate people with money could be very dangerous. I needed to be ready for whatever came next. The call came at 6 in the morning, 3 days after the party. Patricia Reddick's voice was tense and urgent. Danny, we have a problem. Elena's legal team filed an emergency motion yesterday afternoon. They're claiming you threatened her at the party and that you're mentally unstable. They want a restraining order and immediate custody of Ethan. I sat up in my narrow motel bed, instantly awake. On what grounds? They have witnesses who say you were aggressive and threatening. They're also claiming you've been stalking Elena and that you have a history of violence. That's complete BS, Patricia. You know that. I know that, but we need to be in court at 9 this morning to fight it. Danny, if this restraining order goes through, you won't be able to see Ethan or go within 500 feet of your own house. 2 hours later, I was sitting in a courtroom that smelled like old wood and broken dreams, watching Elena's high-priced legal team present their case to Judge Morrison. No relation to Trent, thankfully. Elena looked the part of the traumatized victim perfectly. She wore a conservative blue dress, minimal makeup, and had somehow managed to make herself look fragile and vulnerable. When she took the stand, her voice shook as she described my threatening behavior at the party. Your Honor, I was terrified. Danny was completely out of control, screaming at me and my guests, making wild accusations. I've never seen him like that before. I'm genuinely afraid of what he might do next. Her lawyer, a silver-haired man in a $1,000 suit, nodded sympathetically. Your Honor, Mrs. Sullivan has been the victim of an increasingly unstable man who refuses to accept that their marriage is over. We believe Mr. Sullivan poses a genuine threat to our client's safety and to their minor child. Then they called their witnesses. Mrs. Patterson from down the street testified that I had seemed very angry and aggressive at the party. Tom Bradley from Elena's real estate office said I had made threatening gestures and that he was concerned for Elena's well-being. It was a masterful performance, and I could see Judge Morrison taking notes, his expression growing more serious with each witness. When it was our turn, Patricia stood up with quiet confidence. Your Honor, the plaintiff's witnesses have painted a very selective picture of what happened at that party. What they haven't mentioned is why Mr. Sullivan was there or what information he was sharing with the guests. She called Maya to the stand first. Maya looked professional and credible in her dark suit, and she spoke clearly and calmly about Trent Morrison's history of fraud and manipulation. Your Honor, I provided Mr. Sullivan with documented evidence that Mr. Morrison was planning to defraud his wife of her lottery winnings. Everything Mr. Sullivan shared at that party was factual information from public records. He wasn't threatening anyone. He was trying to protect his wife from a known con artist. Then Patricia called Detective Ray Murphy, a weathered cop who'd been investigating Trent Morrison's business dealings. Your Honor, we've been tracking Mr. Morrison for several months in connection with multiple fraud cases. The information Mr. Sullivan provided has been extremely helpful to our investigation. Mr. Morrison is currently wanted for questioning in 3 states. Finally, Patricia called me to the stand. I'd been dreading this moment, but when I sat down and looked out at the courtroom, at Elena sitting with her lawyers, at Ethan in the back row looking scared and confused, I knew exactly what I needed to say. Your Honor, I've been married to Elena for 15 years. In all that time, I have never raised my hand to her or threatened her in any way. Yes, I was angry at that party. My wife had been having an affair for months. She was planning to take my son away from me, and she was about to be victimized by a criminal. I tried to handle it quietly, through lawyers and proper channels, but Elena forced the issue by throwing that party. Mr. Sullivan, Elena's lawyer interrupted, do you deny that you were aggressive and threatening toward my client? I deny that I was threatening. Was I aggressive in presenting the facts about Trent Morrison? Yes. Should I have done it privately? Maybe. But Elena needed to know the truth, and she wasn't listening to anyone else. Judge Morrison looked at me over his glasses. Mr. Sullivan, regardless of your motivations, don't you think there were better ways to handle this situation? Your Honor, I tried the better ways. I hired a lawyer. I filed proper motions. I attempted to resolve this through the legal system. But Elena was planning to leave the state with my son and $10 million that legally belongs to both of us. Sometimes you have to choose between being polite and protecting your family. The judge was quiet for a long moment, reviewing his notes. Finally, he looked up. This is a complicated case with valid concerns on both sides. However, based on the evidence presented, I cannot find that Mr. Sullivan poses a credible threat to his wife or child. The restraining order is denied. Elena's face went white. Her lawyer whispered urgently in her ear, but she shook her head. However, the judge continued, I am concerned about the level of animosity between these parties. I'm ordering both parties to attend mediation before any further proceedings. And, Mr. Sullivan, while I understand your frustration, I strongly advise you to channel your energies through proper legal channels going forward. Yes, Your Honor. As we filed out of the courtroom, Elena caught up with me in the hallway. Danny, please. Can we talk privately? I looked at Patricia, who nodded. I'll wait for you outside. Elena and I found a quiet corner near the courthouse cafeteria. Up close, I could see that she'd been crying, and she looked exhausted. Danny, I'm sorry about all of this. I know you were trying to help me, even if I couldn't see it at the time. Elena, Trent Morrison would have destroyed you. You know that now, right? She nodded miserably. The FBI came to see me yesterday. They said he's wanted in connection with a multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. They think he was planning to use my lottery money to pay back his other victims. Are you okay? No, I'm not okay. I've ruined everything. My marriage, my reputation, my relationship with Ethan, and for what? For a man who saw me as nothing but a paycheck? We stood there in the courthouse hallway, 15 years of marriage hanging between us like a ghost. Elena, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Do you want to try to save our marriage? She was quiet for a long time, staring at the floor. When she finally looked up, her eyes were filled with tears. Danny, I don't know if we can go back. Too much has happened. Too much trust has been broken. I'm not talking about going back. I'm talking about starting over. What would that look like? It would look like you moving out of the house while we figure things out. It would look like joint custody of Ethan. It would look like marriage counseling and a lot of hard work. And Elena, it would look like you accepting responsibility for what you've done and making real changes. And the money? The lottery money gets split according to the law. Half to you, half to me. No arguments, no lawyers, just what's fair. Elena wiped her eyes with a tissue from her purse. Danny, I don't deserve another chance. Maybe not, but Ethan deserves parents who can at least be civil to each other. And maybe, after everything we've been through, we owe it to ourselves to try. She was quiet for another long moment. Then she nodded slowly. Okay, let's try. 6 months later, I was back in my house. Elena was living in a condo across town, and we were taking things one day at a time. The marriage counseling was brutal, 2 hours every week of dissecting everything that had gone wrong between us. But slowly, painfully, we were learning to trust each other again. Ethan was doing better too. He split his time between Elena's place and the house, and he seemed relieved that his parents weren't at war anymore. Trent Morrison was serving 5 years in federal prison for fraud. The FBI had used Elena's information to build their case against him, and she'd testified at his trial. Seeing him in handcuffs and an orange jumpsuit had been the final nail in the coffin of whatever feelings she'd had for him. As for the money, we'd split it exactly as I'd proposed, $5 million each. I'd used part of mine to start my own construction company, and business was good. Elena had invested hers conservatively and gone back to work at the real estate office, trying to rebuild her reputation one honest sale at a time. Were we going to make it as a couple? I honestly didn't know. Some days were good, some days were hard, and some days we could barely stand to be in the same room together. But we were trying, and that was more than I'd thought possible 6 months ago. Maya had been right about one thing. Actions have consequences. Elena's actions had nearly destroyed our family, but they'd also forced us to confront problems we'd been ignoring for years. My actions had saved us from financial ruin, but they'd also shown me a ruthless side of myself I hadn't known existed. The truth was, we were both different people now. The question was whether these new versions of ourselves could build something better than what we'd had before. I was sitting on the front porch one evening, watching Ethan play basketball in the driveway, when Elena pulled up in her car. She'd been at her therapy appointment, individual counseling, separate from our couples sessions. "How did it go?" I asked as she walked up the front steps. "Hard, but good." She sat down in the chair next to mine, the same chair where Trent Morrison had sat that first night when my world had fallen apart. "Danny, I need to tell you something. Dr. Martinez thinks I should consider moving back home. Not immediately, but eventually, if you're okay with it." I looked at my wife, my ex-wife, my maybe future wife, the mother of my child, the woman who'd broken my heart and was slowly helping me put it back together. "Elena, I think we should take it slow. But yeah, I'm okay with it." She smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in months. "Good, because I miss this. I miss us. I miss us too." We sat there in comfortable silence, watching our son shoot baskets in the fading light. It wasn't the ending I'd imagined when this whole mess started, but it was an ending I could live with. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply refusing to let someone else's mistakes destroy your life. Elena had learned that lesson the hard way, and so had I.